Hi, this is John Lorenzo Vlaskamp, Compost Co-Lead at the UpGarden, and I appreciate you taking the time to review this presentation on composting at the UpGarden. So this is a living document because our composting procedures are going to change from time to time after we learn what does and doesn't work. So we'll update this presentation and a quick reference guide, and then we'll let you know both on the listserv and on Workspace. And we really appreciate your flexibility and cooperation as we figure this composting process out. So why do we compost at the UpGarden? One of the main reasons is because it keeps our nutrients on site, which reduces our need for soil amendments, such as fertilizers. And it provides micronutrients and beneficial microbes to the soil, both of which are not included in commercial fertilizers. So it's important that we have a high quality compost available. And it replenishes our limited soil resources. At the UpGarden, we can't really dig deeper, so we have to build up our soils. Mulching with compost reduces water use by preventing evaporation. And it also eliminates the fuel that's required if we send that stuff off site. We don't have to truck this anywhere, so we use it right on the site where it is, and that saves a lot of fuel. It gives a greater appreciation for the natural cycles. When you've taken some plant material, chopped it up, put it in the compost, and then later you get the finished compost and use that on your new plantings, it's a really neat experience that you can't really get any other way. And then it's free, it's fun, and it's a really good workout. So there's going to be four main paths for any unwanted plant material you have. There's offsite composting, vermicomposting, hot composting, and trench composting. And the path that you're going to take is going to depend on the plant material and how you design your plot. So good candidates for offsite composting include weeds with seeds, infested plants, noxious weeds, and diseased plants. And to help me remember these four items, I came up with the acronym of WIND, or WIND, I guess. But again, that's weeds with seeds, infested plants, noxious weeds, and diseased plants, as well as burlap bags that are damaged. We've tried composting these, but they don't seem to break down quickly enough, and they just become a problem. So those can go off-site now, as well as root balls, especially large root balls or roots that have a lot of soil left in them. They just slow our process down too much, and so they need to be cut off and sent off-site, as well as any sticks or stems that are larger than a half an inch, especially like the kale stalks and woody stems that are too big to go through our chipper. Those are just too difficult for us to deal with, so those need to be sent off-site as well. And then when you do come across those things, what you want to do is knock all the soil from the roots. And you want to be really aggressive because there's way more soil in there than you think. And it's really important that we keep that in our plots. So an empty bucket actually works really well for that. You just take the plant, bang it against the sides of the empty bucket, and this dirt will fall into the bottom, and you can just pour that back into your plot. You're going to take all of the weeds and other offsite materials, and you're going to put them in a paper yard waste bag or a paper grocery bag, and you only want to fill that to a manageable weight. And then you're going to place the bag neatly outside of the northeast entrance in the designated pickup area, and then someone from the Seattle Center facilities will come around and pick that up periodically. So things we don't want to do for the offsite composting is we don't want to use plastic bags because the Seattle Center facilities, they pick it up and they throw it right into their Cedar Grove dumpster. So we want to make sure that we're in paper bags for that. Don't fill the bags so that they're too heavy or too difficult to move. We want to be good to the Seattle Center facilities guys because they do us a big favor by coming to pick this stuff up. And don't leave your bag in the aisle or at the trailer or in the compost areas for someone else to clean up. It's really important that we all take care of our own waste as much as possible. So now we'll move on to vermicomposting, which is just another fancy word for the worm bin. And some good foods for the worms are dead flowers and stems, bolting greens, radishes, anything that's gone to seed and you don't want in your plot anymore, overripe or rotting produce, And any produce that has been ruined by pests, and by pests I mean like rabbits or uh, rats, things like that, or anything that's dropped and has been in contact with the ground and has picked up bugs or anything like that that you wouldn't want to eat. That all makes good candidates for the worm bin. And things that should not go in the worm bin are onions and garlic, hot peppers, citrus fruit, and all three of those are highly acidic and they'll burn the worm's skin and just generally don't work well in the worm bin. Another thing is pet waste. We don't want any of that in the worm bin. And also, if you bring food scraps from home, everything except fruits and vegetables shouldn't go in the worm bin. So you don't want any bread or rice or anything that's seasoned. Those just, the worms don't really like that kind of stuff, and it just doesn't work well in the worm bin. So getting things ready for the worm bins is actually a fairly simple process. You're just going to chop everything to 1 to 2 inch pieces, and then you're going to place those pieces in this metal can next to the worm bin and secure the lid. Moldy or rotten produce is totally fine for the worms. And let us know if the bin is full or if it's moldy or if you have any questions about what you can put in there. Things to definitely not do is, again, don't add onions, garlic, hot peppers, or citrus. All of those really bad for the worm bin and cause some problems. Don't forget to replace that lid securely because we can get rats in there if we don't, and we want this to be worm food, not rat food. And please, please, please do not send inedible produce to offsite composting. It's a super valuable resource that we can definitely use in the garden, and we need it for the worms. Some good materials for the hot compost are plants that are finished for the season, trimmings from any pruning you do, plants that are removed for space when you're thinning. We can definitely use that plant material in our hot compost. Woody stems and raspberry canes, they need to go into a separate can and then we'll get them shredded and incorporated into the compost. And weeds without seeds are totally fine. And grass clippings are all good candidates. Now, things you don't want to include in the hot compost are weeds with seeds, infested plants, noxious weeds, diseased plants, and soil. And this one's important enough, I wanted to break it out specifically. We do not need soil in the hot compost. It actually slows everything down and creates a lot of problems for us. So please get that soil off before you turn the plant material in for hot composting. Procedure for hot composting is the first step is to knock all of the soil from the roots. You want to get all of the soil that you possibly can out of those roots and keep it in your plot because you're not going to really get more soil. So you want to hang on to everything that you have. And it slows down our hot composting and reduces our temperatures, which are both not ideal. You also want to remove those large roots and woody stems and get those in the offsite bags. You want to cut all the greens and stems into 6-inch pieces or less. The smaller the better, because the smaller the pieces are, the faster and the hotter our compost pile goes, which means we get more frequent, higher quality compost with the smaller pieces. You want to put those chopped greens into the greens cans at each chopping station. And then you'll want to put the sticks in the appropriate can as well, because we can't just have those in the regular greens cans because we have to shred those before we can use them. And the things you don't want to do are, again, I'm going to reiterate, probably sound like a broken record, but please don't put any soil in the compost cans. It causes a big problem for us. So please try to keep as much soil as possible in your plot. Don't put any roots or sticks in the greens cans. The roots need to go off-site and the sticks have a special can so we can get those shredded. You don't want to put whole plants in the greens cans because they take way too long to break down, and so we'll end up having to chop them before we can add them into the pile. And it's just super helpful for us if you can chop those before you put them in. Don't leave plants on the chopping table for someone else to chop because we all get paid the same for working at the UpGarden, which is $0. So please do your own chopping. It doesn't take very long. It's pretty easy. And don't add anything directly to the compost pile, please. We have um, some kind of specific requirements that we have in those piles, and so we like to monitor everything that's going in. And that way, if things aren't working out, we have a much better idea of what's been going in there, so we can adjust. So just chop your things, put them in the greens cans, and we'll take care of everything else. So when we do have hot compost available, we'll make an announcement on Workplace, and you'll be able to find the finished compost in one or both of these cans. The upper can is in the upper compost area, and the lower can in the picture is in the center compost area. And the availability is first come, first serve, but we ask that you only take one 5-gallon bucket per week to allow others time to get theirs. And then when the compost is gone, it's gone until we do another harvest. And you can either do a 2 to 3 inch mulch around your plantings, being careful not to touch the stem of the plant. Some plants are tolerant of that, but some really hate it. So just as a general practice, avoid touching the stem. Or you can mix it with the topsoil before you're doing your planting, and then that'll give your little starts a boost. And now onto the trench composting. This is something that's going to take place in your own plot. Some materials that are good for trench composting are plants that are finished for the season, trimmings from any pruning you do, plants that are removed for space, or weeds without seeds. The things you don't want to trench compost, again, weeds with seeds, infested plants, noxious weeds, or diseased plants. Also, sticks and large stems don't break down fast enough for this method to really work for them, but they are still really good for the hot compost, so please get those sticks into the stick can, and we'll get them into the hot compost. And then produce. Unless you can bury it very deeply and get it covered very securely, the rats can still get to the produce that's in your plot, and we really need it in the worm bin. So please just get that into the worm can and we'll take it from there. The steps for trench composting, and again, this happens in your plot. It's actually part of the way that your plot is laid out. If you're going to dig a trench 12 to 18 inches across and as deep as you can, leaving 4 to 6 inches of soil at the bottom. This can also double as your walkway. And if you want a nice finish look, you can fold some burlap bags in half and lay them in the middle. That'll also prevent water from evaporating in the hottest parts of the summer too. And as you have things that you want to compost, you just dig a hole in the trench and you chop the plant material and put it in the hole, and then you cover the hole with soil. And then you just continue doing that each time you have more materials that you need to compost. You kind of move your way down the trench, giving things time to compost while they're in your plot there. And again, you don't want to add sticks or produce or diseased plants or noxious weeds to the trench. The sticks and the produce we have separate paths for, and the diseased plants and the noxious weeds we want to get out of the garden so we can hopefully reduce their presence in the garden. And then each season or so, you're going to want to either change the location of the trench or at least rotate the soil out of the trench to circulate the nutrients throughout your plot. If you have questions about this, feel free to reach out, and if there's a lot of interest, we might do a separate class or a presentation on this if people are interested. This is a map that I've put together to show you where the different elements that you might need can be found within the UpGarden. The one thing that I didn't note on here is that the chopping tools are all in the tool trailer. But then anything else you might need is listed on the left here, along with its location on the right. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to help. So I keep talking about noxious weeds, and you may have no idea what that means, like I did when I first started at the UpGarden. So I wanted to give you some pictures and names of the common noxious weeds that we see up at the UpGarden. And that's going to be hemp nettle, bindweed, garlic mustard, groundsel, shotweed, and knotweed. And again, we want to try to keep these out of our on-site streams as much as possible by sending them to the off-site composting, especially if they have flowers or seeds. And one of the most important things to remember is that we're a team here. So if you have any questions or suggestions, please reach out to us either on Workspace or via email. And if you're not physically able to complete any of this, just let us know. We'll work with you on some accommodations. We understand that not everyone has the same physical ability, so we're happy to work with those that need the extra help. And again, we're all volunteers, so please do your best to follow the procedures and make our job easier. And that'll also ensure a high quality compost product. And to close, here's a few resources that I thought you might find helpful, including ways to contact us on the compost team, as well as some noxious plant lists and plant and insect identifier apps that I found really helpful as I was learning kind of the things that I'm running into while I'm working at the garden there. And most importantly, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video and helping us create a very high quality compost for all the gardeners at the UpGarden.